Welcome to the Orange Power Podcast, and we are excited to have with us the coach of the number one team in the country on the men's side, a top 25 team on the women's side, Coach Dave Smith with the cross-country team for Oklahoma State. Coach, good to have you here on the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You know, before we get into this season and we talk about what's going on, I got to go back a little bit. You and I had a couple of really good text exchanges during the Olympics, and it was just fun. First off, you told me a story too, though. I think we had you on a different venue, but you were telling me a story about what you did with your kids and watching the Olympics, right? Finding different things that you didn't know anything about or wanted to know more about and enjoy. Tell me that story. Tell me what you guys did for the Olympics.
Yeah, every day we watch the track and field part because my children have been around a little bit. They understand it, and they like the runners.
Yeah.
So we'd watch that, but we'd also pick something to go back and watch on the Peacock, on recorded. We picked a different sport to watch. Sometimes it was gymnastics. We watched diving. The one that really captured all of our attention was the speed climbing, the speed rock climbing. That blew my mind. I could not believe how fast those people could. It looked like they were being pulled up by their safety harnesses.
Right.
They could not possibly propel themselves the way they were. So, yeah, but we watch something different every day.
Which is really cool. And, I mean, that could almost be a track event, right? I mean, it's about the speed and it's about the steps. I mean, I don't know. That was amazing. I mean, some of those guys and gals were climbing those walls, scaling those walls in less than 3 seconds, 4 seconds. I mean, it was nuts how fast they were going. But I thought that was cool. You know, obviously the Olympics for you guys, it only comes around every 4 years, but it is your sport being highlighted in ways that it just typically isn't. So that's got to be a really fun time of the year for you as a family and even for your program and the kids that participate at Oklahoma State.
Oh, for sure. I mean, track and field is the mother of the Olympics. The Olympics was born from track and field and expanded out to all the sports we see now, but it all began with track and field. And this is going back to ancient Greece all the way to the modern Olympics. It all was centered around track and field. And so for us, it's every 4-year thing. It's when the whole world pays attention and you get, 50, 60, 70,000 people in a stadium to watch track and field, which is pretty exciting.
And part of the reason why we were having some of the text exchanges, we had just had an interview that we'd done elsewhere, and we were just talking about several things, but what was amazing about that to me was the personality that the races took on, right? I mean, there's personalities that are participating, but the personality of even a 100-meter race, right? How much can happen in a 100-meter race that would be this big story? But there were event after event, crazy things that were happening. Slow 50 meters, but the crazy last 50 were unreal. I mean, every race truly told a story, and I think it was seen more this year than maybe typical, or maybe I just paid more attention. I don't know, but it seemed like every race had its own personality.
I think you're right, and I noticed, of course I pay attention to track and field, but more to collegiate track than professional track. I'm not a real pro sports fan. Even in track and field, I concentrate on the college. But this year it seemed to me that no matter where I went, there was more people tuned in to the Olympics as a whole and to track and field specifically. Even going to the pharmacy to pick up something, some guy stopped me and said something like, I was picking up a COVID test.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, did you see that Noah Lyles ran with it?" And I said, "I did see it." He'd know who I was.
Yeah.
He goes, "Do you know that he's gonna run the 200, but he's not gonna run the relay?" And I go, "I'm aware of that. Yeah, I heard that." So just having random people talk to a stranger about track and field, it seemed like there was just a much higher level of interest in kind of fan participation as opposed to recently. And when I was a kid, I remember in the early and mid 80s, everybody tuned in to the Olympic Games. It was everybody was watching it, and it kind of we've gotten away from that. But this year seemed like we came back to it a little bit.
Well, and the other part that was really cool to me, I even remember texting you on one event, and I said that guy won, and he looked like, I can't believe he didn't win. He actually came in third.
Yeah.
And it was like, I can't believe that just happened. And I said, that was amazing. And you said, well, yeah, he probably was, because we had 4 or 5 guys compete against him, and we beat him in Big 12s. And the amount of people participating that you guys had competed against over the course of the year, that was the other part, that these participants, and it competed against them all year long. That was the part that was really fascinating to me.
Well, that's true. And you're talking about the steeplechaser from BYU, and he was 18th at the conference meet last fall.
Wow.
10 months later, he's third in the world at the Olympic Games. And so, he was 18th. We had, I think, 6 or 7 guys beat him at the conference championships, the Big 12 championships in cross country. But that's kind of the way track and field goes sometimes. And you're right. there's a huge percentage of the people participating in track and field that came through the NCAA worldwide.
Yeah.
I think for the first time ever, the 1,500 meters this year, all three medalists had come through the NCAA, which is the first time that's ever happened. So we do know all these people and their personalities and their coaches and are connected to so many people who are competing, and we root against or root for depending on how we feel about them and their institutions. But it's fun.
He just personalized it so much for you, and then you shedded a little bit of that light on it for me, and I thought that was really, really cool stuff. All right, let's talk about your team. Why we're really here talking about this is the cross country side of the season. And so for you guys, Coach, obviously on both the men's and the women's, a lot of success, a lot of high expectations, a lot of good rankings. But let's start on the men's side. Number 1 in the country, and right now you guys are getting a lot of respect, as you would hope.
Yeah, I think we're really good and we're really deep, and I think there's several teams that have maybe a group that can line up with us in the top 4 or 5 runners they're pretty comparable. But I think what people see in our program is that we have depth that goes 8, 9, 10, 11 runners down, where we've got some insurance. Our sport is highly susceptible to injury and overuse, things that pop up, and you never know what's going to happen, and somebody's out for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And so I think part of our ranking is that people see the depth and know that we're insulated against losing a guy or two. We're still pretty good.
Yeah, and so very good there. Top 25 on the women's side. Again, one of the highest, best season finishes a year ago. I mean, this is a team right now that continues to propel and moves up the ranks.
Yeah, I think our programs as a whole last year, it was our best, considering men and women, cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track.
Yeah.
It was the best year we've ever had. And we were, first on the men and third on the women in cross country, and then 7th on the men and 8th on the women in indoor track. And I think 13th or 14th on the women and 27th on the men in the outdoor track. So we're top 30 across all 6 sports. There's 300 teams in Division I track and field. So It was a really, really good year for us. And I think, we're carrying on with that. The women, we are on a little bit of a rebuild, or not so much a rebuild as it's interesting to see what's going to happen. Because we've got a lot of young athletes who have been waiting their time. And with the graduation of Taylor Rowe and Molly Bourne and Gabby Henteman, and Gabia Galvadita went pro early, and Bila Jepkarui is out with a medical. She's going to miss this year. So really 5 of our top 5 or 6 women from last year are not on the team this year. That opens up the doors for a lot of people who have been kind of waiting. And it's amazing to me. I told my team this summer that it's kind of like a plant. When you get a plant with huge leaves at the top, the lower leaves often don't get any sunlight and you don't see what they can do. And then when you prune from the top, you lose some of those big leaves, you think, oh my gosh, what happened to my tree? Then all of a sudden, those lower branches get some sunlight. It's amazing what they do. And we're seeing that right now. We've got a bunch of women who, like I said, been waiting, biding their time, and all of a sudden, they look like, all Big 12, All-American type athletes. So I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, when you talk about Taylor Rowe, she wasn't a leaf. She was a branch.
Yeah,
she was such a big part of what you guys did. And I know you're certainly going to miss her, but that does give, because she was so good at so many different things, a lot of other younger athletes, as you mentioned, get that opportunity. So let's talk about training a little bit, all right? So, and even coaching training, right? So when a guy goes out, I mean, I don't know if you're on the bike behind him, yelling instructions and talking about things, or if they just go. And when they do go, how far do they go?
Well, these guys are running a lot. I mean, the men on our team probably average about 90 miles a week. There's guys that might run 120, 130 miles. We've had guys in the 150s per week, and that's
that's a lot.
20 to 30 miles a day, which is a lot.
Wow.
Typically, about 3 or 4 days a week, they're just running. They go out and they get their run in, and often it's 2 runs, a couple 10-mile runs, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. On Sundays, we go long, so it's often 16, 17, 18, 20 miles in one run. And then there's 3 days a week where we meet and do something more structured, either on the cross-country course or the track, where maybe we're doing 10 times 1 mile, 10 with breaks in between, so they can run faster,
right?
But get breaks in the middle. And so there's a whole program and a way we do this and a way we approach it, where I tell the team what we're trying to do is build a bigger engine.
Yeah.
What all of you need is bigger engines. And building an engine takes time, it takes patience, it takes perseverance. And as you come in as a freshman, it's tough. You're going to have to wait your time. But by the time you get to your 3rd, 4th, 5th year, you get that big engine and you're ready to go.
Interesting, maybe odd question, but interesting to me. How often do they have to change shoes? I mean, there's only so much tread on those guys. I mean, 150 miles in a week. I mean, how often do you have to change those?
Typically about once a month they get new shoes, but some guys are on every 3-week cycle. If they're doing 150 and you're at 450 in 3 weeks, you need a new pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Typically these shoes today are made to last for 300 to 400 miles with a elite runner.
Right.
But someone who kind of is goes a little easier, maybe they can last 500 miles. But I think the way we run it, a pair of shoes lasts about 300-400 miles.
Yeah, mine would last about 600 miles, about 6,000 miles. There's no pressure on mine. Let's talk about your schedule. Obviously, you got another event coming up, a home event, right?
Yeah.
Coming up here on October 19th.
Yeah, we have a small meet probably here. In years where we host a major championship like a conference or regionals or nationals, which we do almost every year on our course, it's much more highly participated because people want to come and see the course.
Yeah.
This year is the 1 year in this span of about 8 or 9 where we're not hosting a major championship.
Right.
So it'll be a smaller participated meet, but our athletes we've got a job to do. We know we're trying to not only win the meet and compete well, we're trying to set ourselves up for the conference meet, the regional meet, and the national meet, and do things in a very specific way to give us the best chance to perform well at the end of the season.
Well, and obviously coming up on the heels of that is the Big 12s, and then on to the regionals and nationals, and that's all on the heels of that. But then, but you will be hosting again soon, right? That was just announced. The championship's coming back here in a couple of seasons.
Yeah, we have the NCAA regional championships next year, 2025, and the Big 12 championships in 2026, and the NCAA national championships in 2027. So we're back on that cycle of kind of hosting something every year, and excited for it. I know.
Yeah.
We have the best cross-country course in the world in the Griner family cross-country course.
Wow.
I've been all over the world to cross-country meets. There is nothing like it anywhere, and we're proud of it, certainly, and love to bring people in to see it. And we have a lot of people that show up here, coaches and athletes who I love the jealousy. And they come and see it, and they comment on, man, I can't believe what your course is, and wish we had something just 1/10 as good as this.
And last thing on that, because the course is so incredible, because the success is so high, what has that done for recruiting? Is it continue? I mean, people think, well, if you're good, they're just going to find you. No, you still have to go find them. But how has that opened doors and made it possible to find elite runners that maybe 20 years ago was a little harder to get here?
Yep. Part of it is the course. Part of it is the success. Part of it is just group psychology. It's hard to predict. It's kind of like the stock market. Sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down, and you can't figure out why. There's honestly right now on our women's team, which has not been quite as successful as our men, we are having a year that we've never had in recruiting.
Wow.
The amount of kids we've brought in, I think we're batting at almost 100% in kids we've brought in who have ended up committing. And on the men, it's them in the opposite. It's been really hard. We're struggling, and it just goes in waves, and you don't know what causes this group psychology across the country, across the world. But we are fortunate on the men's team that, or unfortunate, that we don't have a lot of room. We got a really good team that's still pretty young, so we're looking for a piece or two every year, and that's really it. And right now, it's been a little bit of a grind, but I think we're getting close on a couple of good guys.
And that's always the good news there. Coach, appreciate the time. Best of luck at this event. Obviously, the Big 12s and onward. We appreciate the way you guys represent Oklahoma State. You do it very proudly, and proud of what you guys are doing, but we appreciate the time today.
Thanks.
All right, and that's going to wrap things up. Appreciate Coach Smith being here. Appreciate you guys tuning in as well. I'm Casey Kendrick. We'll see you next time on the Orange Power Podcast.